After a man named Bernard arrives at work, he gets a text from his wife, Julie, reminding him of their daughter's birthday celebration later that day. He takes note of this, and just as he closes from work, he decides to head home. However, his boss, Mr. Flaxman, arrives with a client and tells Bernard to wait for some extra hours. Even though Bernard tries to tell his boss that he has another arrangement, Mr. Flaxman gets him to stay. After a few hours, Bernard is finally able to leave, but he gets several texts from Julie, complaining about how he keeps missing important family celebrations because of work. As he gets home, he sees his wife holding their daughter Eve, who is now asleep. Bernard tries to explain what happened, but Julie seems to have had enough. She then asks if he got Eve anything, and at that point, Bernard realizes that he has nothing to show. He, however, walks away to the living room to pick up an old box on the shelf. He then presents it to Eve, who doesn't look impressed by it, especially because the box can't even open. At this point, Julie realizes that Bernard just picked out a random box for their daughter. She immediately tells Eve to pack her things so they can go to her grandmother's place. Bernard tries to stop this from happening, but Julie doesn't listen to him. She also adds that all Eve wanted for her birthday was a dollhouse, and Bernard couldn't even spare some time to help her get it. Following this, Julie and Eve leave the house, and this makes Bernard feel really sad. The next day, Bernard goes to work, and when he meets Mr. Flaxman, he complains about how spending extra hours at work the other day cost him his wife and daughter. He then tells his boss that he'll need some days off. However, Mr. Flaxman fires Bernard on the spot, saying he doesn't care about his personal life. Bernard is not pleased with this, and he lets Mr. Flaxman know how he feels. Just then, he heads home looking sad. As he gets to his apartment building, the doorman, Lenny, tries to talk to him, but Bernard doesn't seem to be in the mood. After entering his apartment, he sees the old box he gave to Eve on the previous day. As he tries to open it, a strange dust suddenly emerges from the box, leaving him scared. After the dust disappears, Bernard starts to wonder what happened, and not long after, he sees a lady named Flora in his apartment. Bernard is shocked to see her, and he asks how she got into his apartment. She then tells him that she's a genie. Bernard doesn't believe this, but Flora says that she has been in the box for over 2,000 years. She also tells him to make a wish, and even though he initially hesitates, he wishes for a camel to appear in his apartment. Much to his surprise, this happens, and Bernard can't believe that there's a real genie in his house. He asks if he has exhausted all his wishes, but she says he can make unlimited wishes. He looks happy about this, and as he laments about what has recently happened to him, he wishes for Julie and Eve to love him again. However, Flora says wishes can't change feelings. She then encourages him to wish for things that will make Julie and Eve forgive him. Bernard thinks it's a good idea, so he wishes for Flora to take him to Julie's mom's house. As they get there, Bernard and Flora start contemplating what he has to do first. While he's at it, Julie sees them, and when she comes out, Bernard introduces Flora as his co-worker. He also adds that they were passing by, and they just thought to say hello. However, as Bernard and Flora seem to act weirdly, Julie tells them to leave. Shortly after, Bernard feels disappointed that he's losing his wife, and as he looks sad, Flora suggests buying her gifts. As this sounds like a good idea, he agrees to do it. The two of them then embark on a shopping spree. After they're done shopping, Flora sees a group of kids waiting to receive their gifts from Santa. She asks Bernard what's going on, and he says it's part of a celebration for Christmas. When she also asks for more information, he adds that it's a celebration of the day Jesus Christ was born. Flora sounds surprised to hear this because she used to know Jesus before she got locked in the box. Bernard can't believe it, but Flora then tells him nice things about Jesus. He looks happy to hear this, and after a while, he suggests granting the wishes of all the kids waiting for a present from Santa. Flora agrees to this, and with her help, some of the kids get their dream presents. After they leave there, Bernard takes Flora to see a movie by Tom Cruise. Flora enjoys it, and on their way home, she can't stop talking about the popular actor. As they arrive at the house, Flora gets to meet Lenny, who seems to like her. Flora also looks interested in him, and after talking to each other for a while, she joins Bernard back in his apartment. The next day, Bernard then decides to give the things he bought to Julie and Eve. Before he leaves with Flora, she gets him to wish for a good car that can take them there. After a while, they get to Eve's school, and Bernard gets Flora to be invisible. After meeting Julie and Eve, Bernard says sorry for what happened the other day. He also says he's now ready to be there for his family. Eve then asks if he'd like to have ice cream with them, and as Julie approves, Bernard agrees to join them. Before they leave, Eve says she hopes they have her favorite flavor at the ice cream place, and Bernard secretly makes a wish for this to happen. As they get there, Eve is happy to see that they have her favorite flavor. Bernard also enjoys hanging out with his wife and daughter. Just as he tells them about the things he got for them, a man named Johnny arrives with his daughter and sits at their table. While Bernard is confused, Julie says that Johnny is her mother's neighbor, who has been really good to her. She also adds that Johnny's daughter is friends with Eve. Bernard then looks jealous, but he doesn't say anything about this. As they're all then through with their ice cream, Johnny suggests going to see a movie, and as the kids agree, Julie tells Bernard that they have to go. She, however, asks if he'd like Eve to come to his apartment in a few days' time, and he agrees. On his way back home with Flora, Bernard complains about how he couldn't give out the gifts to Julie and Eve. As he continues to talk about his disappointment, Flora says they still have enough time to think of what to do. Shortly after they get home, they hear the doorbell ring, and it turns out to be Bernard's family. Despite being shocked to see them, Bernard welcomes them in and introduces Flora to them as his cook. After Flora then gets the food ready, she serves the family. While they're eating, they seem to argue a lot, and Bernard doesn't like this. He then complains to Flora and says he wishes he could make them happy. Flora instantly comes up with a plan and tells Bernard to tell his family that she's a real genie. Bernard agrees, but when he tells his family, none of them believe him. He then has to prove it to them by changing his brother-in-law's sweater, switching his dad to his younger self. This leaves all of them shocked, and Bernard says they can all make 3 wishes. However, things soon take a wrong turn when Bernard's sister and her husband use their wishes against each other. Before things escalate, Bernard's mom wishes for everything to be over, and with this, Flora sends them home. Shortly after, Bernard remembers that he still hasn't made any plans for Eve. As he thinks of what to do, Flora suggests changing how the house looks. Bernard agrees, and he lets her work her magic. In the process, he gets his framed football jersey to be switched to the Mona Lisa painting. He also gets Flora to make a dollhouse for Eve. The next day, Julie drops Eve off at Bernard's place, and he looks happy to see his daughter. As they enter the house, he tells Eve that Flora is a co-worker who will be staying with them for a while. He also mentions that he has a surprise for her, and as she sees a dollhouse in her room, she looks excited and thanks her dad. They also get to spend quality time together until he takes her back to meet Julie. Meanwhile, the Mona Lisa painting has been reported stolen at a museum, and the police are now on high alert to find whoever took it. The next day, Julie calls Bernard and suggests having a family dinner at his place. He agrees to this, and Flora helps him prepare for it. When the day of the dinner arrives, Julie looks shocked to see how much the house has changed. While they're then eating, Bernard does well to impress Julie and Eve. Even though she enjoys herself that night, Julie still tells Bernard that she needs more time on her own. Bernard is not happy about this, but Julie says she can bring his daughter to him on Christmas Eve. Bernard still feels disappointed, and shortly after, Julie leaves with Eve. Flora then shows up to console Bernard on how things went. She also mentions that she had a lot of things prepared for him and Julie. She takes him around the house and shows him the new fireplace she even magically created just for them. Just then, he hears the doorbell ring, and Flora looks happy as she tells him that it's likely Julie. Bernard looks excited and tells Flora to leave the house and go to the theater to spend some time there. As she leaves, Bernard opens the door, only to see that it's a neighbor who has come to tell him that there's smoke coming out of his apartment. Bernard immediately checks around and sees a huge fire in his room caused by Flora's fireplace. He calls the fire department, and after the men are done with their work, they're shocked to see the Mona Lisa painting in the house. Bernard realizes he could get in trouble, so he wishes for it to be gone, but Flora is already far away. Because the painting has already been reported as stolen, the firemen report Bernard to the police. While in custody, a detective named Perez tries to get information from Bernard about how he stole the painting from a museum in France, but Bernard doesn't give anything up. When Perez then threatens to send him to prison, Bernard says he had an accomplice. Following this, the cops are able to find Flora and arrest her too. As she gets to the police department, she runs away and uses the microphone to announce to Bernard that she's around. Luckily, Bernard hears this, and he starts planning his next move. In a bid to find out more about how the Mona Lisa was stolen, Perez also interrogates Flora, but she doesn't say anything that makes sense to the detective. Days later, Perez then meets with Bernard and tells him that the cops in France have asked for the criminals to be transferred to their country for questioning. Despite this, Bernard looks happy because he thinks he'll be in the same police van as Flora. However, Perez says it's not going to happen. As he is then about to be taken to the police van, he tries to call on Flora to swap the Mona Lisa back, but she doesn't hear him. Luckily, he sees a microphone at the reception, so he uses it to tell Flora to swap back his framed jersey. She finally hears him and uses her magic to complete the swap. Just then, Perez receives a call from France, telling him that the Mona Lisa painting is no longer missing. He gets angry and goes into his office to tell his men to bring out the painting they took at Bernard's house. However, when they bring out the painting, it turns out to be a jersey. Following this, Bernard and Flora finally get released. Just then, Bernard realizes that it's already Christmas Eve, and Julie will be bringing Eve to his house soon. He gets Flora to take him home, and he makes it just in time to meet Julie and Eve. After Julie drops Eve off, Bernard looks troubled as he sees his wife leave, but he says nothing. When Bernard and Eve are then inside, she asks why Flora is still staying with him. As she also mentions that he's keeping something from her, Bernard decides to tell her the truth about Flora. However, Eve doesn't believe him. She then mentions that if Flora is a real genie, then it means she must have a magic flying carpet. Flora says she has one, and shortly after, the three of them fly around the city on a magical carpet. After a while, they then drop Eve at her grandma's house. As they get home, Bernard thanks Flora for helping him make Eve happy. Flora says she's happy to do it, and she also asks if he has anything he wants for himself. Just then, he wishes for Mr. Flaxman to donate all his money to a charity. Shortly after, this gets reported on the news, with Mr. Flaxman looking shocked to hear what happened because he didn't make the donation himself. Bernard then looks really happy to see Mr. Flaxman getting what he deserves for being an awful boss. The next day, Bernard gets Flora a special sweater as her Christmas present. She looks happy about it, and he then gives her a note saying it contains her other present from him. As she reads the note, she sees that Bernard wants to make a final wish for her to be free. She gets very emotional and says she didn't expect it. She also thanks him for such a kind gesture. Shortly after, she leaves the house, and while they're talking outside, Flora tells Bernard that after she leaves, he'll still get the chance to make 3 final wishes. She then gives him a paper containing his name and a coded message. She says it will come in handy one day when he's about to start using his last wishes. As Bernard asks where she'll be going next, she says she has no idea yet. She then tells him that she wants him to know that he's the best friend she has ever heard. She also adds that she has never seen someone as selfless as him. Bernard gets emotional, and he makes the mistake of saying that he wishes she was gone already. Flora suddenly disappears, and Bernard realizes what he said. He then goes into his apartment building and tells Lenny that Flora is gone. As he also shows Lenny the paper she gave him, the two men start to wonder what it could mean. Shortly after, Bernard then realizes that it's a code to remind him of the day he first messed up with his wife and child. He looks happy about this, and as he goes into his apartment, he wishes to start all over from that day. His wish comes to pass, and he goes back to when he was just about to leave work on Eve's birthday. As Mr. Flaxman is about to get him to stay back, Bernard says he has other important things to do. He also quits his job and calls Mr. Flaxman a bad boss. From there, Bernard leaves work and buys a small dollhouse for Eve. He also eventually stops to get a small bouquet of flowers for Julie. A while later, he arrives home and gives the flowers to Julie, who looks surprised to see him home early. Bernard says he just wanted to make sure he didn't miss the chance to spend some quality time with his wife and daughter. Eve also shows up and looks surprised to see her dad already home early from work. As they then leave the house, Julie asks Bernard about work, and he says he already quit. Julie is shocked by this because it's what she has always wanted. Bernard then says no job is worth more time than his family. He adds that instead of going ice skating to celebrate Eve's birthday, they can just go to a restaurant. As they get to the restaurant, it turns out there are no free tables. However, Bernard uses his second wish to get a free table. This works just fine, and the waiter at the restaurant helps Bernard and his family get a table. When it's time to place an order, Eve asks for something outside the menu, and the waiter says she can't have it. With this, Bernard uses his final wish to help his daughter get what she wants to make her happy. As they then enjoy their evening together, Bernard makes a toast to Julie and Eve. Days later, while the three of them are at home, Julie says she's too tired to cook anything, so Bernard suggests getting pizza at a nearby place. As he heads out, he greets the new doorman and heads to the new pizza place, which is owned by Lenny. The two old friends catch up on how things have been, and as Bernard goes in, he suddenly sees Flora coming to take his order. It turns out that Flora has decided to stay in the city, where she's now in a relationship with Lenny.